So basically, this film is it starts off with two simple steps like avoiding beer, which has a lot of carbs, um, portioning your food, and then it kind of goes into this drama almost about how he goes through a heartbreak, goes through that is most of the actual plot of this, and then ends out with like one more like avoid fruit juices. But so this whole film, while it seems like this kind of surface level and like avoid certain things to lose weight or do certain things to lose weight, it has a lot more social commentary than that. And so one of the things that we want to start out with was how cinematography kind of played into making this film and making it a good film. And so one of the things I wanted you guys, or ask you guys and see if you noticed, was about how certain colors have certain impacts on whether it be the main character or just how like a scene was portrayed.
So I noticed that there were a lot of primary colors, specifically being red and yellow and some green. You see this in the background of each step. When it's like step 4, it's a yellow background, and they're pretty like bright. You also like you see this carry over into the actual plot of step 3. Is that okay? With like him getting his heart broken and working out. You see it in his clothes. You see it in the background. Does anyone want to go off of the colors you see there, like what y'all took?
Yeah, I seeing red and yellow throughout the film, like in conjunction with each other, reminded me of McDonald's. And I think in a class I took my freshman year, we talked about how red and yellow, that color combination is used in fast food restaurants a lot because it like makes you hungry and it makes you eat faster because they want the turnover to keep going. And that was kind of ironic to me considering it was like a how to lose weight video.
And like also like I kind of like took it into like the emotions of different colors. And so yellow being both a like light, so being kind of like a goal that you're looking for. Yellow can represent that, and yellow can also represent somewhat a greed or a self-consciousness in a bad way. And so he's always, in the beginning especially, there's so much yellow in this film. For example, in the very beginning, when he's laying on the floor naked, has like a yellow shirt on the ground, he has yellow peeps next to him, he has like, there's a ton of like different scenes with a yellow background, the picture of his ex has a yellow wall in the background, and so like all of that kind of can represent his greed in obtaining all these specific things, including his ex-girlfriend Rachel, in order to have this certain image fulfilled that he wants of himself. And also like throughout the film, he goes from yellow, which is kind of the greed, he's like self-conscious and all that, to red whenever he's angry and he's in the gym. Like they show a lot of prominent red on the walls to show that he's like infuriated with himself and infuriated with the situation, and he's wearing a red hoodie. And then in the very last scene, whenever he's up on the like rooftop or the parking deck, he's wearing a green hoodie that came out of nowhere, and he kind of has a self-realization there. So kind of like, the shift through colors kind of shows his shift in personality and self-awareness.
There's also two things going off that idea. With your yellow, he writes his weight goals on a yellow legal pad. So
Yeah.
agreed to like wanting to get that weight. And also, I just realized this, so I agree with the colors because they're always wearing like very plain shirts, but all one color, like no designs or anything. Like the ex wearing the red shirt, him wearing the yellow workout shirt. The new girl wears gray. She wears a gray tank top. She wears a gray when they're on the top of the roof. I wonder if that's because she's like neutral, maybe
Right,
in a
just
good
like
way.
black and white.
Yeah.
Like she has her own ideals that she follows.
Yeah.
She's black and white versus
But
this
not
emotion.
something maybe he's like lusting for in a bad way, or someone he's angry at, or even, I don't know, not quite his peace of mind, but like just something that's good and neutral for him.
Yeah, he hasn't like quite figured her out yet, so he can't project an emotion on her.
But like even not just a gray shirt, I think she wears like gray pants usually.
Yeah. And then the only other thing with cinematography that really stood out was how they would use really long drawn out scenes, because this whole like film has transition. It's so quick, and then you'd have those scenes where it stops, like where he's looking at like the ex, and he's pissed off. He's like, well, fuck this or whatever. And like, but he stands there. It's like, well, like you feel because of that scene, you feel almost awkward and like angsty because you're like, oh man, like this scene's taking too long after all these quick transitions. And I feel like, do you guys feel that was used in a good way?
One thing I found that was interesting was, although those scenes were oftentimes drawn out, there was still very sequential. Like,
Yeah.
it was still following a step-by-step process, and I think that's definitely still ties into the social commentary, which we'll discuss later.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought it was really well, just speaking in terms of quality, I thought it was well done, because it didn't detract you by the fact that it was still drawn out, but you still saw how everything still fell step by step by step.
Also, the long scenes, the one that really got me is when he's by himself on the roof looking at the buildings, and the speaker, the narrator, really slows down, and that's when it kind of hit me. There's a deeper meaning with this story. Like, at first there was this kind of a funny, like, a little parody of how to lose weight, and then it was like, and you look at the empty skyscrapers, and I was like, whoa, this parody is getting to something deeper here.
Basically, in terms of plot, we just had a guy who, through a sequence of decisions he makes over time, like every day seems to be the same, and then all of a sudden it changes, and it's things kind of start looking up for him, and like this new girl comes into his life, and he constantly says he feels, or like reminds himself that he's crap, and then like changes his mind about that. And what I wanted to ask about plot was what the real conflict and what the real conflict is, and why the antagonist drives this conflict.
So I took the real conflict not really being him against his ex, but more him like versus himself, and dealing with the breakup and getting to the point where he could like himself and be an individual and not, you know, a heartbroken boyfriend of this girl. And then I felt like the ex, who I would say would be the antagonist, kind of drove that along though, and him having motivation to work out and lose weight and find the new girl.
Yeah, I feel like it was definitely him against himself. But he didn't like seem to really get that through the entire film. Like his character didn't understand. Really, it seemed like he was trying to make himself better for her, like in a like revenge scheme almost, but by like just transforming his body. But it was like really an internal struggle.
I think I have a counterpoint to that. Like maybe I just realized it wasn't a revenge of him getting a better body, but like working out is one of the like only hobbies, okay, you can correct me, where it's like just you against yourself, and it's just you making yourself better and like you facing those mental barriers. And so I think that's an interesting hobby that he picked up, other than like looking sexier. But yeah.
I think, yeah, it definitely ties into Alta, and like bouncing off of that. I think the conflict of the story is not so much like him getting over this girl, but him getting over this girl is sort of the conduit for him trying to find a sense of self-identity that he's happy with. Because I mean, at the start, he looks like a slob. He works at a fucking mattress store, and he's very much the very essence of how devastated he is at this by the breakup goes to show how like meaningless his life to him really feels. And then we see this later on when he at the first scene when he's at the top of the garage, where he's like realizes that like, you know, everything's empty, everything's meaningless, and then how that later changes on at the second scene.
I think him just like breaking the cycle is part of that too, where like, you know, he, especially like looking at like, oh, the empty like cubicles, so basically he has work and then he had like working out, so like the conflict was more about like him breaking outside of this one cubicle, you know, I guess like metaphorically. He, you know, would be at work and he would work out, and like even when he started working out, you know, gaining all these different like benefits and stuff, he still was like kind of in like this one like cycle where he's just going through the same motion over and over, including even like where he looks directly at the camera whenever like the girl is talking to him, when Melissa is talking to him saying like, oh, the food will be healthy on the date, and that's right when he looks at like the camera, because like he still is looking outside of himself there. He's looking at, you know, the audience there, so he's just looking away, kind of being where this whole thing is just him not having anything like at all, like it not having a self-identity, not having his own like method. It's just basically he's just going like in a cycle over and over. I feel like the main conflict was him like eventually realizing that while those are empty cubicles, while like this is just one cycle over and over, that he still can have his like own life in this, but he has to look into himself.
Do you think him breaking the fourth wall was him still like seeking approval
I think so.
from outside forces?
Yeah. Like that's why, and especially it was right after she said, "Oh, the food will be healthy," and he didn't look
Is
happy.
that him like
He didn't look
seeking
happy.
approval
He's
from
like
us?
looking at us like, "Oh, well, like I guess you guys can approve of me for eating healthy." I think that's what that whole part was about.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't take it as that. I kind of felt like he was just letting life happen still at that point. He just was kind of like bopping along, and then this girl came and she was like, "Want to go to dinner?" And he's like, "Sure, why not?" Like she's always there, like at the bench. Now she's asking me to dinner, and then when he looked at the camera, I kind of took it as just like an obligatory, like I guess I'll go out with her type of thing. But that also was the point when it started breaking the mundane eventually, because like his voice like the whole entire time was consistent, which I felt like was at first just mundane, and then it ended up like he's like, "Oh, I'm having cheat days, like I'm getting out of my like sleep schedule, I'm not like answering this girl's call anymore because I don't care about her," and things started looking up for him.
One of the things I wanted to talk about was like, why do you think he works in the mattress store? Dr. Hammer's always like telling us that, and especially in short films, like nothing is for no reason. So why a mattress store of all places?
Well, my surface level analysis was so they could simply put that scene in of the new boyfriend showing his moves off on the mattress. But I know that's surface level, so.
The ex, I noticed during that scene, she went from kind of like, what's going on, to like really getting into that scene through the like progression. I just decided, yeah.
I think it ties. So I personally think it's they had to pick a job that was kind of easy and available to kind of show his development as a character. But I think it was specifically a mattress store to accommodate that scene, if I'm being quite honest.
Also, they had a scene where it was like he was losing weight and they put the mattress types beside his face and it was like soft for him.
Yeah.
So I just took it to be kind of a like comedic play, but I know there was other reasons.
So my take on this was like what my thought of the social commentary was, like a commentary on us like not being awake ever, and sort of like his routine cycle again and again and again. Wake up, go to work, work out, eat, sleep, and like go back to work, where he's like talking to people about how they sleep. The name of this mattress store is like Sweet Dreams, which he is at first not doing a very good job at, and he even talks about like, I dream of like a bottomless black pool. Like that's pretty it's pretty harsh. And it seemed to me like when she took him on top of that the parking deck, and it was like, oh, my chest expanded, it seemed like he was finally like waking up out of the cycle and like being open to see something new, to like actually start living. And like that's when he starts to have his moments of self-realization, like, oh, it's been a year since I've done this, and so forth.
And one of you guys was saying like that's comparative to like him getting off the mattress, like his chest expanding, the springs expanding. You guys were talking about that.
Yeah, such a strange way to say
Yeah.
he felt love,
Yeah.
which I guess is what he's trying to say.
My chest
Got off the
expanded.
mattress.
It also supports the whole like mundaneness of the whole film, because every night he hits the bed this like similar way. Then he gets up in the morning, hits his alarm, and then he goes to spend like all day with more mattresses.
So like the majority of his life he's asleep,
Yeah.
be it like actually sleeping or at a mattress store.
Yeah.
I think though that so he definitely does have that awakening moment, but I think towards the end we can kind of see that, and I think this is a bigger social commentary that the film's trying to make, but it almost seems as if he's still in that cycle. So like even after he meets the second girl, he's still narrating it as if it's a step-by-step cyclical process, just there's a few things have shifted now. So, and then even at the end, he like still, even though he's not continually telling himself he's a piece of shit, he's stepping on a piece of shit. which I took as like, okay, you're less of a piece of shit now. So I'd almost argue that while he does awaken a bit, he is still going through this circular process.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was my next question about character arc throughout the film. Like, because there is a step 4 about like don't drink fruit juice because it has too much sugar. After that whole like saga, does he actually arc? Like, I know he arcs within that, but is his arc like more cyclical because he's doing that?
I think like but this moves kind of somewhat on the social commentary. I guess we'll dive into that next. But I think the whole thing is like, no matter what, life is still going to be a cycle. It's whether or not where you're cycling. And so like, for example, like you go through the cycle, and at the very ending, like it does have that straightforward where he says like, oh, you just gotta. It takes time. All of it takes time. And so like I think that's just saying like, oh, that's like going from one circle to the next. And like even like stepping on the crap, like he's no longer the crap, but the crap's still in his life.
Mm-hmm.
And so he is still doing that cycle. Maybe gets rid of that one thing, so that one thing being Rachel, or like him looking negatively at himself, or like looking for approval from outside, whether it be the audience or whether it be whoever it is that he's trying to approve. But no matter what, like he's still getting into a new cycle. It's just what that cycle includes.
I think the character arcs in the sense that while he is still going through a different cycle each and every single time, he now realizes that it's not just anything like worthwhile in life is not like a simple 4-step process.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Also, like, I think another point at arcing when he saw a new way to look at all the empty buildings on the parking deck.
Mm-hmm.
I have an issue with this movie that just like pops into my brain about the cycle, which we can talk about once we like get through social commentary. But it's about like how like he needs approval from everyone else, and finally we'll talk about how he gets approval. Like he finally learns to love himself, but I still have issues that he learns to love himself though by getting it like seeing it through someone else. Isn't that also cyclic? Like he couldn't. We'll get to that. He couldn't get to it by himself. He had to see it mirrored in someone else though. So that's still an issue.
I was talking to Dr. Hammer about that in his office. He was making the argument that if the girl hadn't been the conduit, then it would have been like someone in the gym and the sense of community he feels through that.
But why couldn't it have been himself? Like why couldn't he have looked in the mirror one day? And
I think it drives back to the point of it's a process. So maybe now he's like dependent on this new girl. He goes through an entire cycle and then finally steps up and sees something in himself.
Yeah, it's one up high.
Yeah,
it's just one of the next circles.
Yeah.
Do you get what I'm asking though? Like it's really hard to put in words, but the fact that like to prove himself, he had to get it from someone else, and that's just kind of a weird dichotomy. We can move to social commentary if we want to. So the scene I'm talking about is the scene that Dr. Hammer, that you really want us to focus on, is when he says, "My chest expanded when the girl smiles at him." And why? What does that mean? Like, why does he, let's call it love, why does he love her then when she smiles at him?
So, and this was another thing I talked about with him in his office hours, it's that he finally sees himself. So throughout up until that point in the film, even while he was going through that whole cycle of going to the gym, eating, sleeping, etc., he still views himself pretty negatively, even after he shaved and he started to lose weight. I think it's at that final moment that he's able to see himself in a more positive manner, albeit through someone else's eyes. And because he can finally see that, his chest finally expands. And because this girl is giving him that opportunity to see himself in a positive manner, that's when he begins to find her beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
I think also, like, I hate to always use this analogy now, but the whole circle. So basically, going through this same process over and over. So I feel like right in that moment, through Melissa, she, looking at him in a certain way, he realizes that he's also in this circle. I feel like all this time, he's just going through these, actions, and the actions are just actions. That's it. But he's doing it repetitive, and he doesn't see himself in any of it. He's just seeing like a certain goal or a certain way that he thinks he'll look in the end. But he never actually feels that he has maybe control of himself, or he doesn't have feelings about himself per se. He doesn't have like any confidence in how he looks. It's all basically outside of his realm of what he can control. And I feel like right in that moment he kind of has a realization that this is like his life. Like a girl actually likes him for him, so he has almost, I'm trying to think of the word for it, but like he has like a self sense in all of it. Right at that moment he finally realizes that he has like a sense of self, if anything.
Is that, I know Dr. Hammer kept asking us like why was he so heartbroken over the first girl? Is that why he was so shattered by the first girl? Because he never, and we talked about how we knew the ex, Rebecca, was a pretty terrible girlfriend, just like we can see that in the way of her not remembering the necklace. And was it because like he knew she never saw him that way? He never saw in her what Melissa saw in him, which is truly loving him, I guess.
That, and I feel like he just didn't have any. So like when she broke up with him, he didn't have himself to rely on.
Yeah.
He felt terrible about himself already, and so like when she wasn't in that cycle anymore, then all that was left is like this kind of misery and his despair and like how he felt bad about himself. And so like whenever Melissa, the new girl, introduces that he actually is a good, like a person that can be loved.
Like she never gave that to him.
Yeah.
And so when she left, he had nothing.
Yeah, and so he had nothing. And then whenever he realizes that he can be loved and that he is, loved for himself, and he has that love for himself now, he can move on and go into a different cycle. And that's like the transition into the new cycle where he no longer has the shit. He's no longer the shit, but he's stepping on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that the cycle is also so much bigger than him. Like it's the girl in the gym. Melissa's the new girl. Every time we see her, she's like doing the same exercises. Like she's doing those reverse pivot
Lunges.
Curtsy lunges, whatever they're called. And he like talks like that's her main identifier to him, is that she does these weird like things that he doesn't know. So like I kind of wondered like what her story was and like what brought her there. If she's also there at the gym at the same time he is, like until it closes every day, if that means that she had a similar experience.
Also working on very stereotypical female
Yeah.
enhancement workouts.
I also think that this can be a very broad social commentary, just where, especially, you looked at the audience, like, just, it's put on you and put on all of us, saying that, we are all in these just cycles, where, especially nowadays, like, if we want to say, like, our phone, or we're, like, in our work, or we're in our studies, job, sleep. We're just doing these cycles. We're no longer living and realizing our own self anymore. Like, we all, back in, past times with different dreams that we had, like people would have the American dreams that they would have to, get a certain goal, and then they would just be so happy. They were so content with themselves. And now life has become almost this mundane task where everybody is doing the same thing over and over and over again. I feel like it could be almost just a push on that, where we all need to, step back and stop looking at the cycle and look at ourselves.
Also, didn't you, Sean, have another meaning behind the reason it was a 4-step short film?
Right, because I think, kind of going back to what you're saying about how everything's like this weird mundane cycle, in America it seems that, you get all these like, oh, here's a 4-step prop in 4 easy steps. You can have every single thing you ever wanted. And I think that's why they make that third, they make the third step the third step in order to really drive home that parody of like, it doesn't happen in 4 easy steps. It's this continuous cycle until something finally changes. And then that cycle over and over until something finally changes again and again, and it just ultimately takes time.
Yeah, I feel like that was kind of like the hit home with that thing.
Time is all it takes.
Yeah.
And I love how they like themed it around weight loss. A, because it's the stereotypical like however many step program, but also that is weight, at least in America, is the like hardest thing to love yourself about. Like,
Yeah.
you know, it's just I can see why we went that route instead of, I don't know, how to not be an alcoholic and 5 easy steps or something.
It's ironic that Cam mentioned yellow being green, and then they said that his chest expanded because it reminds me of the Grinch when he grew out of his
My heart
selfishness.
grew 3 times that day.
Yeah.
I got
If you put this, but so I paused it thinking that the phone battery was going to die. That's why there's a jump there. But I think we are all done. Do you guys want to rate it?
Yeah, I have a good idea.
Okay, so I would give it probably a solid like 9. I felt like even though it seemed very surface level at first, the more that I watched it, the more I caught, the more meaning I kind of got out of this film, and I feel like that makes the film very like well done.
4 out of 5 chicken breasts.
I'm not gonna come up with something funny. I would give this is like my 10 out of 10 golden video. I thought this movie was hysterical. Like, I loved how dark the humor was. I love that it was like really self-deprecating the entire time, but like also meaningful, and that every single thing in the video had to do with something bigger. So 10 out of 10.
I give it a 10 out of 10, and this is going to be deep. I watched this last year on Facebook 2 times, and not because I thought it was funny, but because I thought it was really sad, and it was basically my life 2 years ago. But it's fine. It's a 10 out of 10.
Have you broken the cycle?
Yeah,
I
which
know,
step
I'm
are you
still
on?
Are you in a
working
new
out,
cycle?
though.
Are you in a new cycle?
Yeah,
What's
I
that?
went up a weight
Your own
class.
cycle.
Powerlifting.
Yeah.
I give it 9 pivot curtsy lunches.
Oh.
Out of how many, though?
10.
Okay.
Well,
Bye.
Bye.
See you in our short film.
Yeah.
bye.